You are now tuned in to the 𝗪𝗲𝗃 podcast. Get ready to feel inspired, empowered, and to learn from our expert interviews. And now, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome back to another new episode on the 𝗪𝗃𝗃 podcast. I'm your host, Robin Chan. On this episode today, we have our guest, who is none other than Barney, come all the way from Singapore. He has been partnering with the 𝗪𝗃𝗃 Academy for the past 10 years and has been running the Neuro-Linguistic Programming courses in Mauritius. Let's welcome Barney Wee.
It's good to be here.
So Barney, tell us a bit more about yourself and what exactly do you do?
I've been practicing NLP for the last 25 years, and I work with individuals and corporations across many sectors of the business. And the company that I run is Mind Transformations. It has been in existence, and we are the leading so-called NLP provider in Singapore and I guess perhaps around Southeast Asia. The part of the work that I enjoy right now is working with the Singapore University of Social Sciences. This is where I'm chairing, I'm the chairman of a panel of what we call advisors in the graduate diploma life coaching program. So this is the first in Singapore, and I'm very proud to be part of it, to be able to steer the direction of the curriculum. Yeah, and in the pandemic in 2020, where everything's all locked down, I get a chance to be able to complete my PhD. And that is actually very relevant in the work that I'm doing right now, is to get a deeper understanding of what VUCA is and how it impacts us in terms of how we can actually respond in a highly disruptive and changing world.
You talk about VUCA world. Can you briefly talk about it and what is it exactly and how is it impacting us?
The word VUCA originated in the US during the Cold War, and it represents volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And from then, it has kind of evolved into some kind of a management principle or concept on how do you actually anticipate change? How do you manage risk? So it goes to leadership, scenario planning, and so on and so forth. So, and I think that to better understand this, right, I can draw out some examples. I think it was in 2021, very recent, container the size of an island got stuck in the Suez Canal. And that cost about $13.2 billion, and 379 ships were stuck. I don't know about you, but there was a lot of what we call problem with logistics and how things are going to be transported, and it changed the way we actually go about in terms of planning logistics. A few more examples. The pandemic has right now changed the way our healthcare is going to respond. It changed our lives between work and personal life. It changed our trajectory, evolution forever. And climate change is a big problem right now. In some places, there's a scarce of resource. In some places, we are now opening up new opportunities because of the change in the climate. And I guess in Mauritius, you have to contend with bigger cyclones. And changes and everything else. And that impacts social lives and also business decisions. So all these different things that's happening right now changes and impact us in the way we live our lives, make business decisions, and how we're going to tackle the scenarios that we are in. So the VUCA situation has now been so rapid and so fast, right? The way we look at problems, the way we go about solving problems, and the mindset that we have is going through a major revamp or major overhaul. I think the problem is not, a lot of people are not even aware that this is happening right now, and therefore they need to be able to drastically reinvent themselves to be able to respond to the decades of rapid changes coming. In fact, it's already here. It's going to get more and more intense as the years goes by.
So what is the solution for that?
So this is obviously a very complex problem, and I can only speak from my own experience. I've been in the field of neuro-linguistic programming, in simple terms, applied psychology for the last 25 years. So I'm coming from that space. I think that the ability to become self-aware and be able to self-regulate becomes a very important skill that we are talking about today. So for me, if you were to take that and turn it into something broader and richer, then the science that I bring into the conversation is multiple intelligence. And multiple intelligence is a field that has been, that phrase, that the idea has been around since in the early 80s. And now we have taken it and actually brought it down into making it simpler. And we call it multiple intelligence in 4 areas, which is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual intelligences. So in my research and in my work, I think that when people gain more depth, more understanding and mastery in these 4 intelligences, they are much better able to respond to the VUCA world.
So why is it important in the VUCA world?
To answer this question, we need to first understand what the VUCA world demands. In volatile situation, things happen very quickly. We need to be able to maintain our composure, master our emotions, because if things change very rapidly, you can't control your emotion, you have lost. And the ability to act, come up with a plan quickly and act, because we call this situation bleeding. It's a bleeding situation. You need to act very quickly. In uncertain scenarios, then the ability to gather information quickly, to understand it, and to be able to cover blind spots through collaboration with other people is really important, because you can't cover all the blind spots by yourself. So the emphasis is about working with others, collaborating with others in uncertain times. Next is about complexity. Complexity is the notion about being able to gather information, but be able to understand patterns, to think and see patterns and connect the dots. So this is all in the mental space, to be able to manage data and to be able to make sense out of the data. In terms of that. And then in situation that's ambiguous, then this idea about coming up with experiment, designing a good enough experiment and be able to test the experience to get the information, the feedback that you need, right, is the skill set that we need. The notion about failing forward comes from this space, about being able to act on it and get information so that you can know what the next step will be. So that's in an ambiguous situation. So you understand VUCA, what VUCA is demanding, right? Then essentially it's asking us, how do we actually master our nervous system? What is the thing that produces behavior in humans? Is actually our nervous system. It includes our brain and so on and so forth. So that's the area of neuroscience. And so once we understand that, then the idea about what do we need to do with our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual capacities, right? What enable us to be able to respond to the VUCA world. And when I say spiritual, it's this idea about self-awareness, self-mastery, being able to see a long-term plan on how you can develop yourself and seeing how you can play a critical role in the systems that you're operating in, to see a sense of purpose. It's how we define spiritual intelligence in that sense.
So as an NLP developer and master trainer, how does NLP help people develop these multiple intelligence skills?
The short answer to that is that NLP study and model people of excellence. And to be more specific, we study the multiple intelligence of excellent people. So it goes down to the way they think, the way they ask questions, the way they solve problems just in the mental space. It also involves the way they control their emotions and be able to bring the states that they want to be able to perform well, including reading people, how to be able to read people and go along. Those are interpersonal skills in the EQ space. And obviously the ability to be able to turn their thoughts into action, to be able to size situations, use their senses to be able to calibrate situations, right? And turn it into what we call action that they can take at the right time, at the right place, to move with confidence, to be able to hold and control their actions in the right way, are all part of what we call physical intelligence. And last but not least, a sense of purpose. They are always clear about why they are doing what they are doing and being able to connect to their own personal sense of mission, right? That makes them powerful, what we call catalysts of change, right? So we study all of this, and we've been doing that since the early 60s till now, 40 over years, and it's become a huge body of work to be able to take excellence and turn it into learnable skills. Learnable skills. So this is the space that I've been in for the last 25 years, and because of that, right, including the work of multiple intelligence, which is the work of Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner is a professor of Harvard. By including his work into NLP, we are now able to have a more detailed breakdown of what it means to be able to focus on the capacities of the mind, which is the mental, the capacities of the heart, which is the emotional, and capacities of the body and senses, right? Then we are able to break it down and use and turn into a structure with skills that people can actually identify, experience, and in somewhat exercise it at will to be able to utilize those potential and capacities within themselves.
Barney, I understand that you have worked across geographies to help people develop essential skills. Based on your cross-cultural experience, what do you find unique in Mauritius when it comes to multiple intelligence and navigating the VUCA world?
Well, number one, this is a very complex question. So I think we need to split it up into two questions essentially. One question is basically about what are some of the unique observations that I have about Mauritians. And the second part is how that translates into Mauritians would actually react or respond in the VUCA world. Yeah. Now, and what I'm about to say is highly subjective because it's based on my own personal experience, and therefore it's just my perspective. Over the 10 years being here, I think that Mauritians would have a pretty good emotional intelligence EQ in terms of interpersonal relationship. They would actually make the time. They would actually have a graceful way of getting into a conversation, finding out more about the person. So that's a strength, to be able to read people and so on and so forth. And I think the part that has got a bit more challenge perhaps would be the notion of being able to gather information quickly, because they spend a lot of time on the relationship. So the ability to be able to ask more strategic questions, gather information, and then be able to utilize that information quickly. That will be something that they need to sharpen up on. The other area is this idea about thinking in more black and white manner. When I say black and white, it means people need to know the rights and wrongs and what they're supposed to do and to be clear about it. And that becomes a big challenge in a world where VUCA is happening and things are changing very rapidly, right? So the idea about being able to gather information and find ways to be able to connect the information in what we call a logical way, and be able to use what we call the action that you generate to collect more information to know what to do, right? It's this notion about learning and doing at the same time. You will learn and you do at the same time so that you are able to respond to the situation on a more optimal level. I think that's perhaps the thing that our Mauritians need to get into more often. And last but not least, this idea about being able to break out from what we call the social expectation. I don't have the right word for the social expectation or social norms, so that you are able to kind of like respond in situations when VUCA is happening, right? In an awkward situation actually. Because what happens that when the world is changing very rapidly, awkward situation becomes more prevalent. So the ability to be able to gain a composure, to be able to challenge authority, ask questions, to take bold, decisive actions, and keep your senses open to collect the information so that you can actually take the better next step, right? Would be something that I think that Mauritians perhaps need to pay more attention on.
So one of the things to be, because some people they say that they are slow learners. So they are, when you say one of the skills to get is to be able to connect the dots. Is that right?
Yes. When people say they are slow learner, I think that they may actually be in a pace whereby the life permits them to be able to learn, take their own time to learn things. But that ability to learn fast, right, it's not something that, I don't think it's something that you're born with. If you believe you're born like that, then it becomes a limitation.
Yes.
But if you think of it as a skill that I need to learn, to challenge myself to be able to go for training, to be able to stretch my ability to gather information, to be able to problem solve, to think in more creative ways as a skill set, then slow is subjective, because all you need to do is to be able to move at a pace that's faster than where you were before. And that is something that you can learn. Wow. It's a skill set that you can learn, rather than I'm born slow.
Yeah.
Barring the side if someone has got some kind of learning disability and so on and so on. But every one of us have got our own potential to be able to increase that capacity to do so.
And just before we wrap it up, Can you give us one shot of insight or a practical advice for the Rogers community that is watching us today?
If I were to sum it up into a simple framework, would be this idea about self-awareness and self-regulation. They form an very intimate connection to each other. So when we talk about self-awareness, right, is this idea about, at this time right now, right, is to take a much more proactive approach to assess your strengths and your weaknesses. I'm not talking about just in general. You actually take a very serious approach in terms of getting yourself profiled through some kind of assessment. The Gallup Strengths Finder is one of them. And some people might move in the direction of understanding more about themselves, which is the Enneagram, for example. And then there are many other tools. But the idea to understand is to do that is to be able to get a good baseline of your strengths and your weakness. That's one. But the other thing is also to turn that understanding self-awareness into designing what we call a personal development plan and actively work on it.
Yeah.
Right? And actively work on it. So that's self-awareness. And within that space is to turn also that into a daily practice whereby, at least in mind training, I talk about setting intentions. How do you set intention on a daily basis? The intention will guide you to look for some of your own thoughts, your own inner reaction to situation. Because the more you're able to catch that, the more you're able to have the option to choose to act differently. Because if you are not self-aware, whatever you are not aware of controls you. If you are aware of that, you are given a choice. So the process for that is about setting intention. And then the ability to be able to give yourself feedback at the end of the day, we call it self-acknowledgement. And if we do this on an incremental and consistent basis, then you find that your mindset can begin to have a chance to shift. So that's on the self-awareness. But we also need to have the know-how.
Yeah.
Which is how do you regulate yourself? How do you regulate your ability to act in a certain way, to control your emotion, to be able to ask better questions, to be able to hold yourself back from certain things and discipline yourself to do certain things, right? Those are the self-regulation part. So this is where the NLP or any form of psychology, right, will give you tools and techniques to be able to then manage your emotion better, be able to listen in a more critical manner, ask questions in a certain way. So these are the skills. So the self-regulation basically points to me is increasing your mental intelligence, emotional intelligence, and then what we call the physical intelligence, so that you can act with the skill set that you've learned to respond, to regulate yourself to respond to situations. So I think that when you have self-awareness and self-regulation with know-how on how to do it and practicing it on a daily basis, I think over time, right, you can see yourself having what we call the finesse, the confidence to thrive or to be able to respond and thrive in the VUCA world. Yeah.
I like the part when you say setting intentions, and then after that, at the end of
you
the day,
observe yourself.
Yeah, you observe yourself, and at the end of the day, you have a self-acknowledgement.
Yeah. The places where you've done well and the places that you are determined, perhaps more determined to say, the next day I'll do it differently. Yeah.
Wow, that's a very practical tip from you today. So Barney, how can we connect with you?
Okay, first and foremost to Rogers Academy. And if you want to get in touch with me personally, you can go to Facebook and look for Barney Wee. And on the other social platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, look for Mind Transformations. And on our website, you can look for mindtransformations.com.
All right, thank you very much for being with us on the Rogers Podcast. So before we wrap it up today on the Rogers Podcast, I hope you gained some useful insight. And if you'd like to know more about us and connect with us, like our Facebook page, and also connect with us on our website at podcast.rogers.mu. Until next time, I'll see you again. Bye-bye.